Hello guys, this is Randall Root. With the release of SQL Server 2014, it's time to actually go through and take a look at how you would go through and download it and get it installed. So first of all, I'm going to go to the DreamSpark website, and I've located SQL 2014 from the list. Now there's a number of choices that you can pick from, and it's always a little confusing for folks, but really the one you want is the Developer Edition. The reason for that is the Developer Edition contains all the functionality you can get in SQL. And they really want to encourage developers to be able to use all the functionality. That way, if they develop something for a company and that company wants to use their databases and their setup, etc., they will buy the appropriate edition. Hopefully, they'll buy the most expensive one. Whatever the case may be, Developer Edition is really the one you want. It also installs on the most operating systems. So I'm going to go ahead and choose the Developer Edition and start my download. Now this is going to take a while, so the video, I'm going to go ahead and pause the video, and afterwards, after it gets all downloaded, I'll go through the next steps of unzipping it and then doing the install. Now there's a couple different choices you can do. If you've already installed the download manager, you can just go ahead and click on the SDX file. Now I've already installed the secure download manager, so I don't really need that. I just go right down to the steps. So if you haven't, though, it's a quick install. Just go ahead and do that. And then click on the SDX and tell it where you want to save it. Let's see, I probably should put it in a better spot, such as, I think I have one here for software. Let's see if I do. I do. And I'm getting quite a collection here, so I'm going to go ahead and save that. And the name of the file isn't very instructive, so I'm going to call it SQL Server 2014. Now, this part doesn't take very long because the file itself is really pretty small. Oh, it looks like my software download manager is not up to date. I'm not too surprised. So go back here. Looks like I have to download the manager again. Acknowledge that it could do me some harm. I'm willing to take the risk. I'm brave that way. Read the instructions carefully. Now, I don't anticipate this taking very long to get the installation done either, so I'm not going to bother to pause it yet. Once once this finishes installing, I should be able to kick off the download of from the SDX file. Now that's when it actually starts pulling down gigabytes of data. So that is the one that takes the sweet time. And of course I'll be pausing the video for that. Now I don't know if it's going to go ahead and allow me to go back in. Doesn't look like it. So I'm going to go back over here. Go down to my software folder and kick that 2014 off again. And this time I get a different menu. Of course, I'm in good shape. So I'm going to go ahead and download. Now I've got the 64-bit operating system. If I'm not sure, I can go to the Start menu, look at the properties of my computer, and it will tell me what edition, 64-bit operating system. So since I have a 64-bit operating system, and most of us do nowadays, I'm going to go ahead and download the 64-bit version of SQL Server 2014. Now, it is a couple gigs, and that's zipped. When it gets unpacked, it's a little bit larger. I think it's more like about 4. But it doesn't matter. I'm just going to let this thing cook for a while, and I will come back after it's done, and we'll talk about the installation. Okay, well, it took a while, but it was finished, and now I have a folder next to the file where I started off with, the SDX file. Now, if you don't remember where you downloaded to, there is a log file, and it should be in there. Let's see, does it tell you unpacking file? Yeah, it gives you the path, so that will help a little bit. Also, if I launch the SDX file again, you can see where it has location. So anyway, you should be able to find it, and here it is. Now the thing is that it ships with an ISO file. So this allows you to go ahead and burn it easily right on a DVD and do an installation. But if you take the time to download 7-zip, it makes it really, really easy to extract the files right on your hard drive. And it goes pretty fast. So it will unpack the files for you, and that way you can just install it directly from your hard drive. You don't have to actually burn it onto a disk and do the installation that way. So there's nothing wrong with doing, burning on the disk. It's just that it's an extra feature, it's an extra step that you just don't really have to take. And as you can see, once you've unzipped it, you can now get in and start the setup. Now, if you're running on any type of newer Windows operating system, and I assume you would be, you want to make sure you run as administrator. You're going to need full permissions to do your install, so make sure you start off the setup exe that way. I gotta tell you, it's usually best to just shut everything, any of the other programs on your machine down. And I've just done that. Okay, now I'll go down to the installation, and I'll say that I would like to make a new standalone installation. Now, the installation of SQL Server goes through a number of steps, and it usually takes about 20 minutes. So the product key in this download is included. If not, you'd have to get it. Usually DreamSpark will, have a button that you can click on to get the service key, the product key. But we're good to go on this. So, and of course, I want to carefully read through here. I'm a speed reader, and advance it. Now, there's a number of issues that may show up. Looks like we're in really good shape here. Right now it says, firewall. The firewall is turned on. It's enabled, and make sure that the appropriate ports are turned on. And actually, to tell you the truth, that should be just fine. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and install SQL Server feature installation, the database engine, analysis server, reporting server, integration server, and other features. And we're going to select the choices that we want. Certainly I want the database engine. And if you're doing business intelligence at all, you want analysis server and reporting server. Now, The integration server is another piece of software that comes with SQL Server, but it cannot be installed. It cannot be installed as a named instance. So you can only have one installation of integration services. There are no major changes since the 2012 edition in integration services, and so I'm going to leave that unchecked. There are, if I were to do this, it would override the existing installation of integration. I'm not using replication, full text indexing, or extraction in the data quality services. Um, this would be useful to me as far as courseware. So, but for most of you guys, it would not be necessary to check those. And management tools, yes, we definitely want the management tools. Client tools connectivity, yes. Reporting server for SharePoint, no. Data quality client, sure. Integration service for importing and exporting stuff, again, I've already got it, but if you don't have it installed, you would go ahead and check that. And these other things I really can't think I need, but I can always come back and add them later on. Okay, I think I'm good. Now, a default instance is one that doesn't have a additional name. And for some reason, I don't know why Microsoft did this, but they don't use the word default here in the parentheses when you do this. When you install SQL Express, it does give it a named instance. The named instance is SQL Express. And so what happens is that when you try to connect to SQL, you'd put in the name of your computer. Oops, let me change this. It's a bit on the large side. Let me show it. So if I was going to connect to my computer, I would do so by typing in like my computer name slash backslash the name instance, whatever that's going to be, and you get to make it up. In the case of SQL Express, you type in SQL Express. It used to be in the early days you couldn't rename that, but you can now. So most of the time it's going to be SQL Express, and that's what you're seeing here. But if it's if it's the default instance, in other words, the first installation of SQL Server, you just put in the computer name and no slash. Again, I wish Microsoft would have made it so that it would say default here instead of MS SQL Server, but oops, hasn't happened yet, and I'm not holding my breath. So anyway, this is the point where I give it a name, and I'm going to just put in SQL 2014, just to remind me that this is a 2014 installation. You could put in anything you want right there. What's going to happen though is whatever I type in here, that's just going to show up in these little parentheses, this configuration tool. And of course, that's how I'm going to have to connect to it when I get done. Okay. So it gives me the information about what I currently have installed. And it's going to be version 12. That's the directory. Actually, everything looks good here, so I'm just going to go ahead and say next. What's going to happen is that Microsoft is going to make some new accounts. These are the new accounts. And the new accounts are going to be named after whatever name I came up with my named instance. Now, because I call my named instance SQL 2014, that's the account name that they're going to append to their There's stock names for these new accounts: SQL Agent, MS SQL Server, MS OLAP, Reporting Server, Data Transformation Services, etc. And so these accounts are going to be given permissions. Now, it's safe to go ahead and use those as is. It's actually kind of a sweet thing. Or you could go ahead and set them to another account, browse to make the account yourself, and go through and use that account with an appropriate password. In earlier versions, I would actually go ahead and recommend using an account that you had created yourself, because some of these other accounts that they were using just didn't have enough permissions to get the job done. But you're pretty safe to go ahead and leave this as is. You can always make a change later if you need to. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave it all as it is and advance it. This is one of the most important screens that you have to pay attention to. Currently, the database engine server, is set to use Windows Authentication, which is fine. You can change it to mixed mode later on if you need to. But your personal account, the one you're using now, isn't set up as an administrator. In earlier versions of SQL, that would be done for you automatically, but they changed that in 2005 to protect people from just having their account, unbeknownst to them, set as administrator, and then people abusing that for whatever reason. Anyway, later on in 2005, you could just hit next, and it would just pass through without having anybody in there, and then you couldn't access a server. Now, thank goodness they finally stopped that, but you basically have to hit the add current user to acknowledge that you want either your account or somebody else's account in there. So I'm currently logged on as Randall, I believe, and so when I hit add current user, it's going to look that up on my local machine and add me. Or if I was logged into a domain, it would choose that one. If you have other accounts that you want to add, you can do that now. For example, I do have an admin account that I've created, and I can go ahead and put them in as well. But the most important one is yourself. Make sure you add yourself. You can always add other ones later on. Actually, I use that admin account on a regular basis anyway, so I might as well just leave it in there. Now, the same thing is true when I'm working with Analysis Server. I'm going to add myself as a current user. And I'll also add my admin account. Once again, these can be added after the fact if you are logged on as yourself. So the most important one is adding your personal self. I also have to choose between installing it in either tabular mode or multidimensional data mining mode. Tabular mode is becoming a very popular choice, and the multidimensional is the traditional choice. I do much more with multidimensional than I do with tabular currently. I imagine that will change. And you can always install both side by side. You just have to run through the installation again at a later point in time. So for example, I already have it a tabular mode in 2012. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave it at the multidimensional mode. And tell you the truth, for most of my classes, at least currently, that would be that choice. If you're in a class that is covering tabular mode, I would just do an additional install. So I just advance next. Reporting server, I'm just going to go ahead and install it and configure it. Let it set it up for me. If you're doing a ghosted image, so if I make a install on a computer and then make an image of the computer's operating system and put it on some other computer, you really kind of want to just choose the install only and let the configuration set, because otherwise the configuration is very sensitive to changing the operating system's name. But I'm not doing that, so and most people watching this are not either. So I'm just going to go ahead and say next. And we're pretty much ready to go. This part of the install takes about 20 minutes or more. It will, if you go back and do a secondary install right away, a lot of the files are already loaded and it'll be cut down in half or even less. So if you think you want to do a tabular install or a secondary install so you can do things like replication or whatever, what you do is you start the install immediately before you reboot your computer, and that will save you some time. Now this will take so long that it's certainly not worth sitting here watching, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the video again, and then I'll come back after the installation is complete. Okay, the installation is finally finished, and now everything says it was successful. That's a great thing. I should go ahead and complete the installation, and now it's time to check to see if it works. So once again, I'm going to have to go to the Start menu and choose to open SQL Server 2014. Now, it'll be under Programs. Let's see, how can I get this on the screen? Well, Program SQL Server 2014, and there'll be a lot of new menu items, of which I'll go ahead and choose the new 2014 Management Studio. That's the first one I want to connect with. No, I don't think so. I'll just go ahead and use all new settings. Thank you very much. Now this shouldn't take very long. Now to connect, remember that I would have to use my computer name. Let's see, my computer name is, normally, let's see, I don't want to usually do that, so I'll just put in localhost. That's instead of my computer name. If I just put the computer name or localhost, I'll be connecting to my 2012 installation. But because I made a named instance, I'll have to put in whatever name that is. And I chose to call it 2014. So now I'll be able to connect to the database engine in 2014. Okay, I'll hit the new query button. Master dot, let's see, how about dbo dot, let's try the sys. And let's see, how about databases? Database files, databases. Okay. And again, this looks pretty much like it has for a very long time. So not a whole lot different going on. I do see it says version 12 over here. Now, just because I have installed 2014 doesn't mean my 2012 installation is gone. I can connect to it with Management Studio 2014, and you can see this is version 11. That's version 12. Heck, I can even go through and connect to my SQL Express edition, which I believe is, I'm not even sure what that one is. Let's see, version 10. It's 2008. It's not even R2, 2008 R2. I think it starts with a 5 after this. So I've got 3 installations of SQL Server on this particular computer I'm working on, and I can connect to all of them from the SQL Server Management Studio 2014. One thing to note is that after the installation of SQL Server is done, and it seems to check out, you really need to reboot. So that would be my next task. And but SQL Server is installed now, and that hopefully you found this video of use to you. Take care.